All right. Chapter 9, Land Use Regulations and Environmental Issues. In this chapter, we're going to talk about private land use controls and government powers relating to public land use controls. We're going to talk about environmental issues and hazards and hazardous substances, especially those that are used in construction. We're going to find out the ones that are just naturally in the environment, especially those that are subject to federal legislation. We're going to learn to land about landmark preservation and historic properties, which New Jersey being the third state in the nation, we've got a lot of history here. So let's get to it. Land use controls, these are the ownership rights a person possesses in a parcel of real estate, which are subject to public and private land use controls on how they could use that property. You can't just put up a roller coaster or a high rise or build whatever you want on your property. There's certain regulatory controls on how you can use that property, including zoning ordinances, building codes, and deed restrictions. So, deed restrictions are placed on properties by private parties, not by governments, though. These are called restrictive covenants. Those are the legal promises of restrictions that you've agreed to abide by. Illegal restrictions and deeds in violation of the law are not enforceable. Deed restrictions run with the land, they pass from one owner to the next. And restrictions can be added with time limitations or based on the happening of a certain event, which we call these sunset clauses. So let's do these highlights and then also write the little notes like I have here. All right. In the book, I wrote a few more people who could enforce deed restrictions. They give a little story here about a developer and the restrictions that they place in deeds or sometimes in a master deed, and then just simply reference the restrictions in the master, in the deed of each individual property. They reference the master deed, okay, which then you'd have to look up the master deed to see all the restrictions. Like if a developer did a subdivision of a bunch of homes, and all the houses are on, let's say, 100 by 100 lot sizes. Now, the city has a regulation that you could build a house on a 50 by 100 lot size. So you could have built two houses on that lot. Can you tear down that house and build two houses now? Because the city has a regulation that would allow it. But the builder put a restriction in your deed that said the minimum lot size should be 100 by 100. Remember when I told you when it comes to laws and regulations, you always follow the more restrictive rule because the city's more lax and would have allowed you to have two lots. Let me see. Let me give you an example here. If I can find it. Share, let's see, host tools. What the hell is this? Where is it? Document, event. Yeah, okay. Whiteboard. Okay, we're going to do this. New whiteboard offers latest features. Da, 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 da. Okay, very nice. Okay, can everybody see the whiteboard on screen? Yeah. All right, so if you have a property that's 100 by 100, okay? Let's just say that this is 100 feet by 100 feet. And the developer put that as the minimum lot size requirement, but the city says you're allowed to build on a 50 by 100. That would have allowed you to put two houses on that same lot. Which is the more restrictive rule? The one from the developer that has the 100 by 100 requirement because you could only put one on it. So you always have to follow the more restrictive rule, the developers that required the 100 by 100 lot size. Even though the city would have allowed, has restrictions that would have allowed two houses to be built here. You could divide it into two lots and build two houses. The developer put a restriction in the deed saying you could only put one. Sometimes they do this to preserve the neighborhood, to preserve the community. They don't want you building houses right on top of each other. Okay, that would be the reasoning behind it. Okay, let me also put another example here. Clear the page. Let's just say that this is your lot. Okay. Usually you have restrictions on how much area of that lot you could build on. They're called setbacks. Usually the setback from the front of the property is the greatest in size. So you would have a side setback and a rear setback as well. They could be smaller. So let's just say you have a setback like this. Your property is set back off the property line, right? On this side, I put a little too close, but I don't know where the hell the eraser is on here. So is that it? Pen, eraser. Okay. Oh, erased the whole thing. Let's just say you got your building here. Okay. Now, your setback requires you to be back at least this far off the property line. And let's say you end up building something like this. So everything is within the setback except for this portion here. Except for this portion right in there, right? That's over the setback requirement. What can happen? The city could, because you built out of the zone, out beyond the setback, the city could require you to tear down what you have built over that setback. So if that was a whole house that you built here and part of the house was there, they could require you to move that house over or tear down that part of the house. Or if it was a shed or anything else that went over beyond, they could require you to tear that down and fine you and etc. Okay. So when you're buying houses, it's important for us to look at to get a survey done too. We want to make sure that the properties also aren't beyond their boundaries or beyond their setback requirements. All right, now how do I get out of this? Let me see. There we go. Okay, so who can enforce restrictions placed in deeds? Well, the person who put the restriction in the deed, that would be the owner, a remainder man, heirs, or devisees. They have subdivider in the book, but that could be the owner. The owner often is the subdivider. The owner, subdivider who added the restriction, their heirs, devisees, remainder man, or neighbors can enforce restrictions placed in deeds. Okay. Now, the government's powers on how they could restrict your use of your property, we got an acronym here, PEAT, to remember it. That's police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. Those are the four governmental powers that could restrict how you could use your property. The police power is passed on from the federal government to states, counties, and municipalities in order to make legislation for the general welfare of the public that could place restrictions on a property owner, such as policing, with the cops, the police, environmental protection and zoning laws, environmental protection laws, zoning and building ordinances, which could regulate the use of a structure, the size of it, the occupancy, the setback, and things of that nature. The how it's constructed, how it's put together, as well as the rental of real estate. Do you know that you can't rent your own house without getting a permit from the government first? Were you guys aware of that? You need a
No.
No.
permit
Why
from the
is
Why
that?
is
government
that?
to rent your own house. Um, why? Because that's the law. Why is it that? Why is that the law? Because at some point in time, somebody complained about something because somebody did something atrocious and said, there should be a law against this. And politicians, being the political prostitutes that they are more than happy to take away some of your rights so that they could then have more power over you because you demanded that there should be a law preventing somebody from doing something wrong. Instead of having common sense and just going after the person that did something wrong, they take away some of your rights to take control over you and your property. What was that? Benjamin Franklin said that saying, those who are willing to give up their liberty in favor of safety are deserving of none, neither. Right? So you give up some of your rights. Politicians are more than happy to take them from you and take control over you, but be careful when you always demand these things. Um, that's why we also have zoning regulations and environmental protection laws, because somebody did something bad and someone said there should be a law. We need the nanny state to protect us and make up these rules instead of just going after somebody who was a bad offender and did something bad. We should have a law that politicians have power over us and restrict us from being able to do anything. So we need to get their permission. We need to go to your city and you need to file a permit with the city. They're going to send out an inspector. And now you, as a homeowner, need to pay fire marshal and maybe the city inspector to come by and inspect your house and make sure that it's worthy of rental and that it meets the safety standards with the fire, smoke, and carbon monoxide detectors and fire extinguishers and all that stuff. Right. Um, and every time you change renters, you need to pay to get it re-inspected. Why? Well, because the fire department needs to make sure that you get a new, we need to know who the new occupants are going to be. What if there's a fire in the house? We need to make sure we got all the bodies out and there's nobody left inside. And they've got a record like that down at City Hall that they could check really quick. Okay. So that's for safety reasons. So often when we get those fire inspections, when we rent out a property, we usually go down to City Hall and schedule the appointment, but the seller needs to pay for the inspection to get that fire inspection done. Inspector comes down, looks over the house, make sure you have a carbon monoxide detector, smoke detector, fire detector, whatever it is, and a fire extinguisher. Even though recently our our last governor at the end of his term, for some reason, removed the requirement that you're required to have, according to state law, he removed the state law requirement requiring you to have a small fire extinguisher that's under 10 pounds mounted in the kitchen or within 10 feet of the kitchen. Does this mean that you don't need to have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen anymore? No, because even though they removed it as a state law requirement, most of the municipalities have kept it as a municipal requirement. So when you go in to get listings or or whatnot, make sure you tell that property owner change the batteries in the smoke and fire detectors or the carbon monoxide detector. You need to change it because if you could change the batteries in your carbon monoxide detector, it's no good. You need to throw it in the garbage. In 2019, a new law was passed that says that you have to use those 20-year sealed batteries in the carbon monoxide detectors. You're not allowed to use the ones where you change the batteries anymore. Okay. Why? Because when the batteries go dead or they start going dead and they start beeping all the time, what do people usually do? They pull the batteries out and then they never replace them because they don't want to hear the annoying beeping noise. But that beeping noise says, I'm still working, but it's time to change the battery. I'm getting low. It's still protecting, but people pull it out. Or they pull out the batteries to use it for something else, and then they never put batteries back in there. And the thing is, you're costing your family's lives. Carbon monoxide is known as the silent killer. It's an invisible, odorless, tasteless gas that deprives the room of oxygen. It will kill you. It's a silent killer. So that's why they require that 10-year sealed battery detector now. And you got to have that fire extinguisher under 10 pounds, rated to put out ABC type fires. At the end of this chapter, I'll give you all that information again. Mounted in the kitchen with the hardware it came with, not put on top of the refrigerator or in the cabin. Okay, so the police power is what gives you that the government those powers. Eminent domain is another power of the government. It's the power to seize your property if it's needed for a greater public good. That's kind of subjective. That's why I put it in air quotes. What is a greater public good? Do you think eminent domain powers have ever been abused in New Jersey? They're being abused all the time. You hear all the time the government's wanting to take away some farmer's property so that they could put low income housing there in its place. Well, how come you can't take the warehouse or the other property that's abandoned? How come you can't use that property? Why do you need mine? Well, it's a better location. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. How's that my problem? You know, you don't need my property. There's another property you could take. But they abuse the powers because politicians get in bed with developers and then they get them the best properties that they possibly can. Look, the power of eminent domain is reserved for uh, government and certain quasi governmental authorities like public utilities, land clearance commissions, railroads, public housing and redevelopment authorities. Um, Without eminent domain laws, we wouldn't be able to build highways or have the railroads or have gas pipelines because somebody would be like, I don't want it going over my property, or you got to give me a gazillion dollars if you're going to put it over my property, right? So we have these laws called eminent domain that allow the government, if it's needed for the greater public good, to seize your property and justly compensate you for that, whatever the market value is, to pay you for your property. Okay. Um, and then they could use it for the greater public good. But can I, Victor Kaminsky, take your property by eminent domain? Me? Can I take your house by eminent domain?
No.
Want to bet? If I could, if I go and I have let's say that I go and I have I take out a politician, a local politician to lunch, and I say, listen, I'm going to explain to you how it's going to be in your best interest. It's going to be very lucrative for the city. If you take away this lady's house, you don't want to sell it to me. So if you use your powers of eminent domain to take her property and then pay her for it, I will reimburse you the legal costs and the money that you laid out to get that property for me. And in exchange, I'm going to be building a high rise building or an apartment complex or an apartment building or something in its place. Or I'll put up a commercial property. And it's going to yield a lot more tax dollars for the city than her little house that she's got sitting there now. For the greater public good can be interpreted in a lot of ways, I guess, right? So it can be abused in this fashion, and it often is. Um, and that's how me, Victor Kaminsky, can take your property by eminent domain. I go to some politician, tell them how it's in the best interest of the city, all the tax dollars that it'll generate, maybe the additional housing that it'll generate to help solve that housing shortage problem, you know. And so then all of a sudden it's in the public's greater interest, and they'll use their powers of eminent domain to take your property and give it to me. So yeah, it is possible, but
So,
that's a
but
different.
then
Then
that
that
property
property.
will be by your name, right?
Yeah.
So then it's not for public good. It's not a government property now. It's a
Well,
personal.
no, it's not a government property.
So
Uh,
then,
but it
can
is for the
government take such rules? I mean, such can take such steps
what?
to
Wait,
abuse people
what are taxes used for?
for public good.
Okay, so if I tear down your house and I put up something that's going to generate more taxes, is it for the greater public good?
But that no, so that I
Yeah,
understood. That I
okay.
understood, but that's not a government property, right? Eminent domain means that we are taking your property for public good, and that will be of government now, or a mall can, build their.
Okay, hold on one second. I I agree with you, but hold on one second. I'm going to give you one example, and then we could also go to the book. I really need to take a picture of this and put this in the book in the slideshow. Um, I live in Linden, downtown by the train station. There was a shopping center that was there for years. It's a strip mall shopping center. It's like L shaped, um, right by the train station, right next door to the train station. So sometimes you get some problem characters down there. Sometimes you deal with the homeless or whatever, but you know, you call the police and the police deal with it. Well, our mayor decided he wanted to take that property and turn it over to a developer to put a high rise in instead. But there was all thriving businesses there that were very popular businesses for the longest time. You had a Wawa in there, or not a Wawa. It was I forget, some kind of Cumberland Farms or Wawa or some kind of thing like that. You had Big Blue's Sub Shop. You had Carvel Ice Cream. You had a Chinese food store. There was a bank in there. There was all kinds of stuff. So because it's thriving business and it is private property, how could the mayor just take that property so that he could turn it over to a developer to build some high rise housing? He can't. Wait, there is a way. If that property were to become blighted, you know, overcome by crime and filth and homelessness, it becomes a dread of society, basically. Then he could take it from the property owner because they're not maintaining it and then use it for their a greater public good. And so what he did is he told the police to lay back on the response times. Like when people call and there's an issue there, don't really respond to them or don't respond to them quickly. Let the crimes happen pretty much, you know. Don't respond to homeless, don't patrol the area to keep these people away where you could have prevented it just by being visible and driving through the lot periodically. Avoid the area. So that's what the police did, and the crime went up in that area, the homelessness, the filth went up over there. And so they actually seized that property by eminent domain, saying that it was blighted. They told me this. I asked, and they told me this outright. They're proud of how they got it. And I was like, that's sickening. You know, for me, I believe in individual property rights and personal rights of people. I believe in smaller government. This is a problem when you get bigger government. You know, they think that they know better than everyone else. And so they're bragging about it, of how they took this property by eminent domain through these not so fair tactics that they were using. Um, so it does happen. That's an example right there.
So
Now,
I'm sure then they must have commission with the developer as well. Apart from the taxes for public good, they may have own personal interest in that property.
very possible. I wouldn't put it past this guy. He's
Mm.
pretty crooked, you know. Now, what about the house? It's your house, your property. You just got a maybe a one or two family house, and you got a big lot. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, yeah, but it's on a main road. I could use that for a commercial business or something, you know. Maybe I could put a used car dealership there because you know how New Jersey needs another one of those. Um, so how can I get that property from you? Yeah, I could reach out to my politician buddy and see if he could do the dirty deed. But you could be like, no, I'm going to fight it. You know, most people don't because they're like, how can you fight City Hall? Their pockets are so deep, you know. But you can. You could fight it. Say you need to prove that you need it for greater public good. Why can't you? What's the greater good that you need it for? How come you can't take another property in the area and use it for that purpose? Why do you need mine? Okay. So let's just say I'm a developer and I'm going to develop some housing there and put it there. Is that a good enough reason for me to take your property, use the government, my connections to take your property, turn it over to me just so I can put up housing? Um, is it fair?
Probably not fair, but it is doable.
So you say it's legal. I don't like it. I don't like it. You're okay with all that? Hold on. Oh my gosh. Things are changing here before my eyes on my phone. I'm trying to send myself a screenshot so I could add, take me to Gmail. Okay, there we go. I just want to email myself a picture here and I could add it to the slideshow and I could read it on screen with you. Here, I'm going to add another slide. I just emailed myself. So let me add another slide, download that image, add it to the slide. There we go. Download, save as. And okay, so now let me put it in the slideshow. I'm going to create a new slide and put that in it. And this one will be specifically for eminent domain. All right, so this slide is about eminent domain, Kilo versus New London in our book. You could follow along with it, but I'm going to put it up on the slide here. Once I grab that image, here we go. Boom, and it's on the slide. There we All right, so I added this slide. This is on page 147. Okay, Kilo versus New London. In this example, okay, yeah, Kilo versus New London. So in this example, you could see New London is a city in Connecticut, used its eminent domain authority to seize private property to sell to a private developer. The city said developing the land would create jobs and increase tax revenues. Suzette Kilo and others whose property was seized sued New London in state court. The property owners argued the city violated their Fifth Amendment's takings clause, which guaranteed the government will not take private property for public use without just compensation. Specifically, the property owners argued taking the private property to sell to private developers was not a public use. The Connecticut Supreme Court and eventually in 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled 5-4 for New London. After the court's decision, the city allowed a private developer to proceed with its plans. However, the developer was unable to obtain the financing, and then they abandoned the project, and the contested land remains undeveloped lot today. Yeah, look at that. So they fought it all the way to the Supreme Court to take your property, and then they couldn't afford to do anything with it anyway. They won in court, but then they weren't able to do nothing. So now it's sitting as a vacant lot today still. But the argument was, did they have the authority to the city to take the property just so they could turn it over to a developer? Well, this set the precedent right here, the Kilo versus New London court case. And then it was fought all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they ruled 5-4 in favor of New London that said yes. So you could blame the state Supreme Court as well as the Connecticut State Supreme Court as well as the United States Supreme Court. They both ruled in favor of New London, saying that developers can use politicians to take your property and to then turn it over to them. That sucks, right? So what page is that on? 147? Okay. But now we know it's legal. Yikes. Wrong slide. There we go. So the other police powers are, well, we have the police power, we have eminent domain that we just went over. Taxation, which is the charge used to fund the operation of government, and escheat. You know, when you die intestate without a will and no heirs can be located, the state gets your property. So you should highlight this in the book, police power and eminent domain. And then this was the Kilo versus New London, and taxation and escheat. So with this sheet right there, chapter 20, page 377 as the little cross reference where you go over in detail how the process of this sheet actually works. You know, who gets your stuff when you die without a will? Who's entitled to inherit it? And if they don't step forward, then the state can get it. All right, so once again, the slide with all the police powers or government powers, police power, eminent domain, taxation, and escheat. We have zoning ordinances. That's part of which of the governmental powers? That's the police power. Remember, police power, pass environmental protection, zoning, and building ordinances. So that's zoning ordinances dictate what can be built where. There's different areas of town that are called designated districts or zones where commercial property or residential one family or residential two family or apartment buildings and high rises can be built, where in light industrial or heavier industrial can be. You know, these are seven of the common subclasses of resident of zoning laws of different zones. Now there are further subclassifications as well. So these are some common ones: residential, commercial, mixed use, industrial, institutional, recreational, and governmental. But if you were to click on this, I got a link in there. It takes us here. You could see a zoning map from my town. Okay. If I were to zoom in on this, you really need to zoom in on it. There's a legend on the side here. Oh, this is difficult to read in a web browser. Let me zoom out all the way and let me open it from my desktop instead. It's easier to open up from the desktop to fully see. So let me get that. All right, so here's that map. You can see in my town all the different zones, you know, central business district, and they're color coded, but they got these C1, C1A, C1B, C2, EDD. They got all these R1A for residential single family requiring 50 foot of frontage, R2A, two family with 50 foot of frontage, R2B, two family with 40 foot of frontage, R3 is for apartment buildings, R1B for single families with 40 foot of frontage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Runway protection zones because we have an airport. Let's take a look. You can see the color coded, there are color codings. Okay. Here's a section of town that I live in. Okay. This is zoned R1A. So what was R1A again? Single
Single
family
family.
with at least 50 foot of frontage. That means the front of the lot has to be at least 50 feet wide. So this is the area that I live in, and it's zoned R1A for 50 foot of frontage. This is the way that the your town gets divvied up of what can be built where. You see this? This is the airport safety zones. This is where the airport is. And at the beginning and the end of the runways, that's the more likely areas for planes to crash or where they come in at a slope, at a glide slope. So any buildings within these zones are limited on how high they could build their structures because it could interfere with the planes that are landing and taking off. Okay. Just a little, just to give you a little insight into how these zoning maps work that dictate what exactly can be built where. Right. So, highlight on page 148. Zoning ordinances are laws of local authorities, such as municipalities and counties, that regulate and control the use of the land and structures within designated districts, which they call zones. Now, the first of these kinds
Do
of
we
zoning,
need to remember these subclasses?
no, no, because they're different for each municipality. Just be aware there are different types of zoning. You also have mixed use zoning, which could be a combination of residential commercial. Yeah. Now, just be aware that the first of the zoning laws that were ever created was in, I think it was 1967 or six, somewhere around there, 1967, I think. And the first zoning law was made in Trenton. I don't know what it was about. I never bothered to look it up, but I know that the first zoning law ever created was in Trenton. And therefore, Trenton was the only municipality that had a zoning law when they passed the first one. Each municipality, it's up to them if they want to adopt those zoning laws of other towns as well, or just make their own up. So every municipality, from municipality to municipality, there's no zoning law that's common throughout the state in every city. Okay. Each municipality has the right, to make up their own zoning regulations and ordinances. Okay. So here you go. First introduced in 1967, dictating what kind of structure can be built where and the purpose it can be used for. Exclusionary zoning. Ooh, exclusionary means you're excluding someone. We've heard this term before in chapter 4. It was illegal zoning practice, or that's what they dubbed it, outlawed by the Mount Laurel court decisions that said you cannot dictate where you can't zone poor people out of town by requiring large lot sizes beyond their affordability to build a house. So that's where the Mount Laurel court decisions came from. Remember, they made exclusionary zoning illegal. Non-conforming use is a property that does not meet the current zoning use requirements. But then again, it does not have to. The reason being is that the property was being used for that purpose before the zoning laws were ever created in your municipality or changed. So therefore, this ongoing current use that the person's using it for that doesn't meet the new regulations, it's allowed to continue. It's old, like your grandfather. That's why they say, they use that terminology. Its use is grandfathered because it's old, like grandpa. So he's allowed to stick around. We like him. He's a cool guy. He can stick around. So that old use that you've been using it for, you're allowed to use it, continue using it for that purpose. They can't create a zoning law and then say, well, you don't meet the current regulations, so you got to stop its use. Your use has to be allowed because it was there before the zoning law was created or changed. Okay. So that's what a non-conforming use is. You don't need to get a permit for a non-conforming use because the property was being used for that purpose already before the zoning laws were created or changed. However, if you have a property now that you want to use for a purpose that does not meet the current zoning requirements, you would have to get a permit for that to vary from the current law. Thus, the name of this permit is called a variance, to allow you to vary from the current zoning laws. That's a new proposed use that doesn't meet the zoning laws. And then we have a zoning board of appeals. They're the ones that grant or deny variance permits based on a hardship, a need by those that have been impacted by the zoning regulations. I'll get into some examples in the coming slides of that. Now, subdivision regulations. What is a subdivision? Well, in New Jersey, a subdivision is classified as when you sell a smaller lot off of a larger one, you divide it into multiple lots, and you sell off a smaller lot off of a larger one, it's now classified as a subdivision. And the state of New Jersey allows your local municipality to determine what constitutes a major subdivision that requires public hearings before the city and allows residents to chime in on it before they allow its use, and what constitutes a minor subdivision that doesn't require a public hearing. Now, subdivision regulations cover things like the location, the grading, alignment, surfacing, the widths of the streets, highways, and other rights of way, installations of sewer and water mains, the minimum and maximum lot sizes and density area ratios, how much of the lot can be built over. That's important too, because if you build up, if you have a lot and you build on every square inch of your lot, you just say you pave the entire lot. Where's the water going to go when it rains? It's going to go on the neighbor's property. Now the neighbor's going to be flooded, right? So municipalities have to be aware of you're not able to build on every square inch of your property. You have to make concessions for where rainwater goes. You know, let the earth is the best place. The more grass you have to pull in the water into the soil and the earth to absorb it is good. Um, Minimum and maximum lot sizes, building and setback lines that could dictate how far from the property line that a structure can be built. They can require you to tear down a building if you build it over that setback line. All right, let's highlight exclusionary zoning and non-conforming use on page 148.
Mhm. Already done.
And then on page 149, highlight what a variance is and right after the word variance, permit. Because a variance is a permit that allows you to vary from existing zoning regulations. They give a little bit of an example here right afterwards. I'm going to give you that example on a picture, on a drawing in the next slides. So here's an example where a zoning variance requires that your setback from your front setback is 30 feet from the curb, from the property line. The house has to be set back at least 30 feet. But that would pose a problem for this neighbor where 30 feet back, there's a mountain or a cliff. You can't build there. So this creates a hardship for him. This is the perfect candidate for a variance permit that would allow him to build his house closer to the street than normally allowed because it would create a hardship because there's a cliff over there or a mountain, right? I had a girl in one of my classes. I got this example about here. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to explain it. I know what it's about. Um, Anybody familiar with the Colonia Estates section? It's right near Edison, where New Dover Road is, or towards New Dover Road. They're in Colonia. Um, if you're in Island on Route 27, there's train tracks over there, and there's a golf course on one side. At one point, there's an overpass, and it looks like a little access road to the golf course, maybe. That actually goes to a section of town in Colonia. If you were to turn down that street, it doesn't take you into the golf course. It takes you into that section of town of Colonia called the estate section. Nice homes back there. Okay. And it's a winding road with beautiful homes, big homes on both sides with big properties. And it ends up taking you out to Edison. It leads up to Edison. But just before you get out to Edison, the road starts to go up an incline. All right. Where one side of the street can't see the other. And that's what's going on right here. One side of the street can't see the other. On this side, you've got one of those large mansion houses over there still. And on this side, it's actually a small little community of a couple of blocks with like real people, normal size houses, you know? So a girl in one of my classes, she actually had a house there, or her father does. And the garage was really old and starting to list to the side. It was a danger. So the father tore down the garage with the plans of rebuilding it next year. Okay. It was a detached garage. So he tore down the garage. Next year, he goes to the city to get a permit to build the garage. The city says, you don't have enough land there to build a garage. According to the zoning regulations, your lot's too small. And he said, well, I already had a garage there. I just tore it down. I just want to get a permit to build it back up. They said, okay, hold on. They're looking at their papers. We don't see any demolition permits that were taken. They could have fined him thousands of dollars for tearing down that garage without getting a permit first. You don't just need permits for construction, you also need them for demolition. So they let him go. They didn't go after him for that. But he's like, well, I already had a garage there. I was just trying to rebuild the garage. It was listing to the side. I didn't want nobody getting hurt. So I took it down, you know. And they said, well, we could grant you a variance to put it back there because he explained how the foundation is still there where the garage was. It's still there. And they said, oh, so you're not building a new garage, you're just rebuilding the garage on the foundation, right? And he's like, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, yeah. And they're like, okay, we'll give you a variance permit to rebuild your garage there. Uh, but the way variances work is anytime you get a variance issued, you got to send out a letter to everybody that has a property within 300 feet of yours. And as long as nobody objects to it, they'll grant the variance and you could do what you need to. Well, this guy across the street, that elevated street that can't even see on that side of town, he objected and said no. He don't want him building it. So is that the end of the story? No, not necessarily. He could take this guy who said no to court and ask him to explain his reasoning why he doesn't want him to build it. And you know they could go back and forth, but the thing is it's going to take time and you got to go to court for it. Her father didn't have time to take off work and go do that. So last I heard in my class, unfortunately I don't get to hear the rest of the story and whatever came of it. Last I known, the garage never got rebuilt because of that. So it could have by now, I don't know, but last I heard, he couldn't take off work to go do it and argue with this guy, so he never got his garage built. But that's the way variances work. Setbacks, I told you, are the minimum distance from a
And
property line that a structure can be built. Yeah, go ahead.
and what if somebody wants to build something in the backyard, maybe a pool or something like that?
You go to a city, get a permit.
Oh,
You, it may not be against the zoning laws. Remember, you only need a variance for something that's against the current zoning regulations. Putting a pool in your backyard doesn't
needs a permit.
uh, doesn't necessarily violate any rules. You just need to get a building permit for it. Mm-hmm.
And if you're doing any iterations inside the house, then also you need a permit?
Maybe. What are you
Oh,
doing? Are you doing electrical work? Are you doing structural changes? Or are these just decorations and remodeling for looks?
okay.
You know, if that's all it is, you don't need a permit for that. But are you putting in a new sink and toilet and messing with the plumbing and messing with the electrical, putting in framing and walls? Yeah, you need a permit.
Okay.
Okay. Uh, I dealt with a guy in Keensburg. He was buying a house, and he was buying a house that was 9 years old. The house was constructed by a builder who lived in the house. That was his house, the builder's house. So the builder constructed this house. It was a beautiful house. One of those basements that have those 10-foot ceilings, a huge basement, open space. The rest of the house, it was 4 bedrooms, 3 full baths, big deck out back, 2-car detached garage. It was a beautiful house. The problem is we went to go get the CO so that we could close on the property. So the city will get a permit. They'll send out an inspector. And they seen that this property had a bunch of outstanding permits that never got closed from 9 years ago when the guy built the house. He never closed. He filed for the permits, but he never closed them out and had the inspectors come out to inspect the building at the various stages of construction to show that the plumbing was done right, the framing was done right, the electrical was done right. Not a single permit was closed out. The city could require them to tear down the house at the most extreme, but I was begging and pleading. I said, "Listen, I got a guy who's looking to buy the house. We're looking to close on it. Now we're being popped up that this owner who's the builder never closed on a single permit." I said, "Is there anything we could do?" I was like pleading with them. I was like, "Is there anything we could do to resolve this issue? Can we have like maybe an inspector come out, maybe cut a hole in the wall and look at the electrical behind the wall, make sure everything was done right? I mean, is there something they could do, or or is this deal dead and my client's out of the money that he was put in for the purchase?" So they tried to work in, because I pled it, and I pled it good enough, the sob story good enough that they were like, "Okay, well, we could send out inspectors and we'll tell them try to take a look and do their best to try to pass it." The foundation stuff, there's nothing they could do about that. I mean, you could tell it was done right. It looks like it was done right, but really you got to get behind the walls and to really tell. So they came out and they ended up closing out the inspections, and we were able to close on the deal. But they were willing to work with us. If they weren't willing, which they didn't have to, they could have required that homeowner to tear down the house, because they never even got to inspect the foundation if it was done properly. This is how construction works, how those building codes work. Okay. Now, setbacks are the minimum distance from a property line that any structure can be built. Usually the front setback is larger than the side and rear. Frontage is the width of the front of the lot. And the first 6 feet of your property, the city has an easement right to. The utilities do as well, because they could put utility easements. They usually have gas lines and maybe water lines running through this area. They could put up a telephone pole over there if they wanted to. They have easement rights for the first 6 feet. They could put in a little grassy way and then a 4-foot wide sidewalk, right, on your property, because the municipality has easements rights to do that. Density zoning ratios dictate what's the total area of your property that you can build or pave over. So say you have a house with a garage, a walkway, a deck in the back, a patio, then you're going to build a shed here. They may restrict that the maximum total area you can't build over is more than 30 or 35%. That's a made up number, by the way. I just made that up. You got to check with your municipality. Or density zoning ratios could also mean and apply to large pieces of land that dictate how many homes can be built on a property, on that property. It's the same reasoning, whether it's a one-family house and you have a deck and you patio and a shed, or if it's a big lot, how many houses can you build on the lot? For the same reasons. Where's the water going to go? The drainage, the runoff. We want to make sure that you're not building over every inch of your land. Building codes are uniform across the state. It's called the UCC, the Uniform Construction Code. That's one set of building codes that all contractors need to follow. And the DCA in Trenton, that's the Department of Community Affairs, they maintain the database of all these building code regulations. Every municipality has their own city municipal inspectors. If they don't, sometimes smaller municipalities share one inspector amongst small municipalities. If they don't, who does the inspections? A state inspector from the DCA in Trenton will be sent out to go do the inspections for any construction. So building codes are maintained and enforced by the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, or Consumer Affairs. So they'll perform the regulations if you don't have own building code enforcement official in your municipality. Also, any inspector, whether it's a municipal inspector or you hire your own home inspector to do an inspection, they're all licensed with the DCA. You can go here, and here's a link to verify that they're actively licensed inspectors. Because when you're getting a inspection done and you're doing attorney review to try to get the seller to fix something or to give you a credit for something, when you're getting an inspection done, that inspection has to be done by a New Jersey licensed home inspector, not your cousin Vito that knows some stuff about construction because he works in the business, you know? It has to be a licensed New Jersey home inspector. So you could come here. Here's the page where you could verify that. Anybody with a professional license, you could verify it here. We could click on license type and go down to home inspectors, HHHABCDEFGH home inspector right there. And you can either look up their by city or name or their license number. I'm going to look at them all. So here are all the home inspectors that are licensed in New Jersey. Here's their license numbers, their name, the license type, the status of their licenses, the city that they live in, and the state they live in. Okay, so you'll see some of these, look, Pennsylvania, New York. They could live in a different state, but be licensed to do inspections here as well. See, look at the very first guy on the list. His license is expired. I don't know. Maybe he retired. Maybe he died. I don't know. This could be a long time ago. Or he just didn't keep up with it. He just failed to renew. So, and that was in, his license expired in 2023. That home inspector. Maybe he died. Maybe he retired. I don't know. But this is how you could verify that they're actively licensed home inspectors. You see, there's a bunch of expired ones, inactive ones. What are the inactive ones? What is that about? Status change reason, licensee requested the status change to inactive status for some reason. His license expired in 2005. So it's inactive. I would say it's expired at this point. But you see how you could look them up in this database. And look, we've got over 40 pages of licensed inspectors in the database. 71 pages total of licensed New Jersey home inspectors. Some inactive, pending, expired. This guy's waiting for his license. Don't ever recommend a home inspector to someone. You could supply a list of inspectors for convenience and information purposes, but you should have a disclosure on there. We do not personally recommend anybody. You don't want to be associated if they do a bad job, you know? All right. And that's it for that. The building codes are maintained and enforced by the DCA. You could check the inspectors. It could be a city inspector too. You got to make sure they're licensed with the state. Before anybody can occupy a property, commercial or residential, after construction, they need to inspect it to make sure it's fit for human habitation and there's no condition that would pose a threat to the health or safety of its occupants. We call that a CO inspection, a certificate of occupancy. That's required for all new construction. Now, let's just say that you have existing building, but you did some work on it. The inspection type you would get there, some municipalities also call that a CO. Some use a different name. They call it a certificate of compliance, showing that the new work that had been done is up to code. And if you did no work in your property, but you're just changing ownership, some municipalities also call that a CO, and some call it a continued certificate of occupancy, or CCO. It really depends on the municipality and the lingo that they use. Now, some municipalities you wouldn't think, like Newark, they're actually very strict. They use all these different names: CO, COC, CCO. You need to apply for the right one for the right reason. You know, other municipalities, they call all three of these inspections a CO. They're not too picky with the name. Okay, so it depends on the municipality. We as real estate agents need to advise our property owner when we get a listing that they need to get the CO. Often you may go down to City Hall and order it for them, but remember, there's a fee that needs to be paid as well. So most communities require the issuance of a building permit before the person can build a structure or alter or repair an existing building or demolition it. All right. Certificate of occupancy, CO or C of O, for an altered building, certificate of compliance. In some municipalities, a certificate of continuing occupancy could also be required for transfers of existing buildings that didn't get any work done to them. Everybody get that highlighted? Page 149. All right. All right, now let's get into the environmental issues. New Jersey recognizes the need to balance the legitimate commercial use of the land with the need to preserve its vital resources to protect the quality of the state's air, water, and soil. Did you know that New Jersey is the most densely populated state in the United States? Yet the majority of our land is undeveloped. You seen our governor just the other day, she put out some kind of a thing that she's working on a plan to seize property from private owners to use to make more affordable housing, like warehouses. Now, I hate when politicians talk like that. They're going to they're going to seize your property. You know, it's my property. I should be able to do whatever I want with it, even if it's just sit it there and let it rot. I'm paying taxes on it. Well, what do you care what I do with it? All right. Um, unless it's needed for like putting in a railroad bridge, tunnel, or something like that, running gas lines. But they're going to use it. She said that she's going to examine uh, old stadiums, city-owned properties, privately owned old shopping centers or malls that may be defunct, or warehouses and such like that. Um, hey, if she wants to buy it, it's one thing, but taking it by eminent domain, I would question whether they're going to be paying you just compensation for it either. All right. Here's a bunch of factoids I placed together for you for a little fun, not for exams, just to relieve your minds a little bit. Okay. You guys are interested in factoids? You guys like factoids? It's like useless information that's interesting. All right. So I put together 3 slides like that for you, and they are pretty interesting. New Jersey declared itself an independent state in 1776. We were the 3rd state admitted to the Union on December 18th, 1787. We're one of the 13 original colonies. That's important to know for real estate exams, by the way. You're going to need to know that for a reason. I'll tell you why. New Jersey is 170 miles long from top to bottom and 70 miles wide at its widest point. We have about 130 miles of coastline. The state has 21 counties and 564 municipalities, with 5 types of municipalities: cities, towns, townships, and boroughs. Wait, cities, town, wait, let me just read it. Boroughs, townships, cities, towns, and villages. There we go. There's the 5. It's the most densely populated state, yet large part of the southern part of the state in rural areas is undeveloped. And despite the fact New Jersey is one of the smallest states in the Union, we have 5 distinct climate regions: northern, central, pine barrens, southwest, and the coastal areas. We're the 11th highest population in all states. Considering how tiny we are, that's something. We have the 3rd highest income averages. New Jersey is located about halfway between the equator and the North Pole on the eastern coast of the United States. Here's our state birds, vegetables, and all that other stuff. State flowers, state bug. We're the only state with our own cryptid. Cryptid is a demon. We've got our own state demon, the Jersey Devil. And our state dinosaur is the Hatterosaurus. We have more horses per capita than Kentucky. You know where the Kentucky Derby is? You figure they got a lot of horses there, right? But per capita, per how many people we got living here versus horses, we got more horses per capita than Kentucky. But you got to think about it. We got a lot of farms. You know, we're the Garden State. We got a lot of farms. We also got a lot of racetracks. Even though one of them closed down recently after over 150 years in business, one of our racetracks our horse tracks have recently closed. Our mascot is a demon, the Jersey Devil. We originated standardized time zones here in New Jersey. We're number 1 in inventing flavors and fragrances. The first telegraph message was sent here and built here, for that matter. We had the first electric light bulb, the world's first boardwalk. Cape May is the nation's first seaside resort. We're home to 26 known nesting pairs of peregrine falcons, which are the fastest animals on Earth. We're the diner capital of the world and the nation's top 10 producer of squash, bell peppers, tomatoes, blueberries, peaches, and cranberries. I didn't know about the peaches. I thought that was like Georgia, down south. I didn't know that we were even a Jersey producer there. But yeah, cranberries. Ocean Spray was based in New Jersey. They recently moved out because New Jersey's not very good for businesses. It's not a good place to have businesses. So they moved their headquarters out of New Jersey, but their farming land is still here in New Jersey. Italian Americans are the state's largest ethnic group. Patterson has the largest Muslim population in the United States. The second largest. You know who has the largest Muslim population in the United States? Dearborn, Michigan. New Jersey is the home to the highest concentration of Asian Indians in the Western Hemisphere. We had the first dinosaur skeleton ever found, the complete dinosaur skeleton. The invention of the first submarine began here, and it actually ended here too, so I should adjust the wording, but the first submarine was invented here in New Jersey. We had the only president in the United States to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. That is, until our recent elections with Donald Trump. He's now the second. At least 100 battles were fought in New Jersey during the Revolutionary War, right here in New Jersey. In 1776, that famous picture with George Washington crossing the Delaware from Trenton, from Delaware River into Trenton, New Jersey, where he fought with and ultimately defeated the British forces. This was one of the first major victories of the Revolutionary War. That's funny. Right now, we've got the King and Queen of Britain visiting, and they're like, "Yeah, we've been allies for 250 years." No, we weren't. We got our freedom from them 250 years ago. And we still fought with them several times after where they tried to battle with us. So we weren't friends with them or allies for 250 years, but we've been allies for a long time, you know. We fought, world wars with them as allies. American abolitionists aided roughly 100,000 Americans in attaining their freedom. We're talking about slavery here. They did away with the slavery. But even before that, New Jersey made its mark in 1804. New Jersey passed an abolition law helping to free more than 12,000 slaves. After that, the state formally outlawed slavery in 1846. Since this was prior to the Civil War and the national abolition of slavery, New Jersey became the prime stop for the Underground Railroad routes. Do you guys remember what town that was? Mount Laurel. We have the busiest and most extensive transportation system in the world. And even though some of our loops and stuff seem very wacky, some of our major highways are very ingenious the way they were built. The Turnpike, the Parkway. More than 2/5 of the land is forested. We have 28 state parks, 11 state forests, and lakes and ponds cover about 300 square miles of our land. Here's some places where I got some of our factoids from. And the Pine Barrens, a little history about our Pine Barrens and the Jersey Devil. You guys familiar with the Jersey Devil? I'm surprised how many people never heard of the Jersey Devil when they come into this class.
I know that.
You guys ever hear of the hockey team, the Jersey Devil?
It's the hockey team. It's down the street.
Well, they adopted. Yeah, they actually have a practice rink in. I'm not sure if it's East Orange or West Orange. They have a hockey rink there where they do their practice. Got a history lesson about the Jersey Devil. Rutgers even has a class about it. And New Jersey's Pine Barrens became the creepiest place in America. There's a video here. It's about 16 minutes long. I'm not going to go over that. You guys can watch these videos if you like on your own time. But here, I'll play the one from the Rutgers. Here we go. It's 3 minutes long.
Places in the forest are scorched. Strange tracks are found round about.
It's a story Angus Cress Gillespie, a professor in Rutgers American Studies Department, has told hundreds of times. The legend of Mrs. Leeds, her family in the Pine Barrens, and the Jersey Devil. It's said that in 1735, Mother Leeds was pregnant with her 13th child. Her husband Daniel, though a good provider, was an uninvolved father.
So the entire burden of taking care of the kids fell on Jane Leeds. The cooking, the cleaning, chopping wood.
She couldn't handle another addition.
In a moment of perhaps understandable weakness, she said, "I hope this one's not a child. Let this one be a devil."
When the baby arrived, everything seemed normal. At first.
But then something went terribly wrong. In the space of less than 20 minutes, the baby grew to the size of 2 full-grown men.
He developed coal red eyes and a horse's head, bat wings, goat feet, and serpentine tail.
And then unexpectedly, with one swipe of his right arm, he slit the throat of the midwife in attendance.
Leaving carnage in his wake, the Jersey Devil flew up the chimney and escaped into the Pine Barrens, where he's said to have terrorized the people ever since.
Most states, there's a state horse, a state bird, a state flower. As far as I know, New Jersey is unique to have a state monster.
Gillespie is a folklorist, and he's quick to explain that the Jersey Devil isn't a once-upon-a-time kind of tale. It's a legend.
Folktale implies that it's fiction.
Do you think it's true?
I try to keep an open mind.
There was a rash of sightings in 1909. And in the oral tradition of folklore, Gillespie has been given first-hand accounts by people who say they've seen the monster or know someone who has. But he says, as a folklorist, it's his job to remain agnostic.
when I see reports of sightings, my initial gut reaction would be skeptical. I mean, is this photoshopped? How reliable is the witness?
The latest sighting was just 2 weeks ago.
I mean, the legend is very much alive, and these sightings sort of prove that.
So as Gillespie tells it,
When you're walking through the Pine Barrens of South Jersey, listen carefully as the wind comes off the ocean through the pines. Old mother leads.
and if you hear a twig crack behind you, beware. It could be you know who. For NJTV News, I'm Maddie Orton.
So there's a little story about the Jersey Devil, but actually, you know what? I did click on the wrong one. The other one shows you even more detail.
Are you LLC curious? Wondering, is it time?
The other one shows a little bit more detail about it. And I'll show you once we get to it. Here we go. Here.
You are watching Uncommon History. Stories that focus on unique and sometimes unknown New Jersey history. Brought to you by the Middlesex County Office of Culture and Heritage, the Middlesex County Board of Chosen Freeholders, and the New Jersey Historical Commission, a division of the Department of State.
Can you guys see this? Hold on 1 second. My Zoom controls just disappeared. I don't know what's going on here. Come on, Zoom. Oh, there we go. Stop that. I don't know what the heck just happened. Zoom just totally disappeared from my my thing there. Okay. Put that back on screen.
The Jersey Devil is one of the most famous legends of America. The immensely popular magazine Weird New Jersey recognized the homegrown demon as New Jersey's oldest, most enduring, and important pieces of folklore. Some New Jerseyans still believe it exists, and ever since the 18th century, it has been cited over 2,000 times, as far north as Paterson and as far south as Burley. It has been described as having the body of a kangaroo, the wings of a bat, the head of a horse, and the feet of a pig. It has also been called a jabberwocky and a woozlebug. But how did this legend begin? In the early 1700s, in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, there lived a craggy old Quaker woman named Leeds. She was the mother of 12 unruly children. Upon learning she was pregnant with her 13th child, she cursed herself, yelling that she wished the 13th child would be born a devil. Apparently, she got her wish. In 1737, as the midwife prepared to bring the beastly baby into the world, Mother Leeds let out an ear-piercing screech, and just after the devil child was born, it devoured Mother Leeds, the midwife, and the rest of the family. After it finished its first meal, the devil fluttered its bat-like wings and flew up the chimney. That night, the Jersey Devil terrorized surrounding homes and snatched up young children. The local legend impacted the region so intensely, a religious leader exorcised the devil for 100 years. But the exorcism apparently did not work. The Jersey Devil returned. According to documents from the Killian Foundation, the United States government sent officials to the Pine Barrens to search for the Jersey Devil. It was even referred to as the Jersey Devil Expedition of 1812. Among the more interesting details about the mission was the description of a female Jersey Devil that crashed through the roof where the expedition team was staying. It was shot and killed, but a claw and tongue from the beast were collected. And according to the documents, the entire adventure was ordered by President James Monroe. Unfortunately, corroborative information has not been located to verify these claims. The Jersey Devil has even become part of popular culture. In 1982, the professional hockey team, the Colorado Rockies, was moved to New Jersey. Fans chose the well-known legend as the team name, and the team has won 3 Stanley Cups. According to the Pinelands Preservation Alliance, the Jersey Devil was named the official state demon of New Jersey, the only state in America with such a distinction. The Jersey Devil has been featured on 2 History Channel series, Monster Quest and Weird US. The sci-fi program Weird or What, hosted by William Shatner, focused on one family's eerie encounter with the Jersey Devil. The film The 13th Child, starring Cliff Robertson and Christopher Atkins, was released on video on Halloween 2002. There are even groups dedicated to searching for the Jersey Devil, one of the most famous legends of New Jersey, and certainly America. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Uncommon History.
So there you go. Brought to you by Middlesex County. Talking about the uncommon history of the Jersey Devil.
So is it nobody lives there or what?
What, the Pine Barrens?
Yeah.
There's very few people, but there's people that live in the Pine Barrens. Have you ever been?
No.
You never been to the Pine Barrens?
No, I haven't. I'm hearing it for the first time.
It's a big forest area. And we have a lot of beautiful nature there. It's untouched. We have a lot of prehistoric woodlands with exotic plants and animals. But be careful, there are bears and bobcats and mountain lions and stuff like that we do have in our
How about
region.
the Jersey?
Yeah, yeah. We have all kinds of creatures and critters living in our forests over here. Yeah, in New Jersey, it's an interesting thing. If you've never visited, let me see. Do I have something here about the Pine Barrens? I know I have like New Jersey factoids.
I'm new to US, so I mean it's been only 2 years, so yeah, there are many things I haven't visited.
Well, you should make way and visit, even if you're just driving through. You don't necessarily have to walk through the forest,
Okay.
but still walk through it. Let me see. I've got all these videos though, but they're so long. I don't want to show you a bunch of long videos about New Jersey. Um, the history ones though are interesting, and I got some in the slideshow. Let me see if I have any other ones here. Got videos about all kinds of funny stuff too, like Jersey stereotypes and such. All right, I'm not gonna get into those.
So it's just a story. Nobody has witnessed Jersey King. Huh?
Well, they say they did.
Okay.
There's people that swear they did, and
Oh.
even recently, there's people that swear they did. But has anybody caught one? No. Is there more than one? I don't know. Is there one? I don't know. The story seems a little bit out there, though. I wish my child would be the devil, and then he grew in 20 minutes, then ate everybody in the room. That seems kind of out there. But but that legend, nonetheless, people say they have sightings of the Jersey Devil. Hey, it could be a creature like Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe there's a prehistoric creature out there. People are just buying this story and abiding it, tying them together. Yeah, I don't know where those are, but I know in the slideshow I got them. So let's go to my slideshow. Come on. Here it is. Let's skip through the slideshow. Okay. All right, so we had that. We went through that. We went through that. Okay, here were some of the resources. Okay, here about the Pine Barrens or the Pine Lands. I found some newer videos of it that are that seem to be pretty good, but um, I guess some of these short ones wouldn't be bad, or one of these short ones. Yeah. Okay, so let's share this.
Covers nearly a quarter of New Jersey. This forested reserve covers nearly a quarter of New Jersey with otherworldly beauty and history, including a hidden tropical oasis. Spanning 7 counties in South Jersey, you'll find a wooded wilderness filled with outdoor adventures, spooky ghost towns, and natural beauty that never seems to end. Welcome to the Pine Barrens. Visitors can start by canoeing or kayaking down many of the rivers that run through the region, including the 50-mile-long Mullica River, and get up close to the native plants and animals. Then you can take to the trails for some hiking, biking, or horseback riding, but not without checking out the Batona Trail, which provides comprehensive views of the Pine Barrens wetlands and uplands across 3 state forests.
Early English settlers couldn't grow vegetables here, so they called it the Barrens and pretty much didn't live here for a good 100 years because it wasn't what they were interested in as far as trying to make a living. It's largely been preserved because of the water. Underneath our feet, 17 trillion gallons of pure water. And that's the big reason why the Pinelands exist. It's so large that you can really be in places that you feel like you're the only person there.
Get a glimpse of history as you stroll through Batstow Village, a former industrial center that's home to 33 historic buildings and one of the oldest operating post offices in the country. Trek deeper into the Pinelands and you'll discover mysterious ghost towns like Harrisville and its great paper mill ruins. Just keep an eye out for the Pine Barrens' most infamous resident, the Jersey Devil, who's rumored to rampage these areas from time to time. If you venture off the beaten path, you might stumble on one of these crystal clear bodies of water hidden within the massive coastal plain, and it's pure tropical bliss. While these blue holes might look like paradise, don't bother trying to take a dip. It's not allowed, and you could end up paying a hefty fine. No matter where you go in the Pine Barrens, one thing's for sure, you'll only find this just in Jersey. Stay tuned next month as I explore an amusement park that's...
All right, so that's just a little bit about the Pine Barrens, showing you how expansive and extensive it actually is. Has anybody ever heard about Mary Ellis and the story of Mary Ellis? It's a romantic story. It's a sad but romantic story. Here, Weird NJ is a website that gives you all kinds of information. They used to make magazines. They probably still do, but they got the website now of all kinds of history and stories and legends about New Jersey. Weird things. Weird NJ. That's where they get their name from. So here is the final part.
Can you share personal stories with them so that they can release?
Here you go. Yeah, they'll investigate stuff. Here is the link to the story of Mary Ellis, but you got the link to the website there. This is what the grave of Mary Ellis looks like. You see, this is the historic look. The trees on the mountainside. 2 graves up here. So that is the resting place. It says, for the past 186 years, Mary Ellis has resided on what she probably thought would be the stately piece of property overlooking the scenic Raritan River. In actuality, though, Mary had really just been monopolizing prime parking space for the better part of the 20th century. The legend of how poor Mary came to rest beneath the asphalt at the Lowe's Theater parking lot on Route 1 in New Brunswick is a romantic and untimely tragic story. Has anybody ever been to the movie theater there on Route 1 in New Brunswick? Did you know that there's a grave there?
What?
Right in the parking lot. So as the story goes, Mary Ellis came to New Brunswick in the 1790s to stay with her young sister, Margaret. It was around that time she met and fell in love with a man who was a sea captain and a former Revolutionary War officer. The captain sailed down the Raritan River out to sea one day, vowing that when he came back, when he returned, him and Mary would get married. He even left her with his beloved horse to look after in his absence. The only problem is back in those days, pirates, all kinds of stuff, bad weather, ships sank all the time. So he never returned. But every day after her captain's departure, Mary would ride his horse out to her sister's house in what's now Livingston Avenue, down the banks of the river to eagerly await the glimpse of her lover's returning ship. In 1813, she purchased a parcel of farmland overlooking the river in which she would maintain her daily vigil. Mary died there 14 years later in 1828, still faithfully anticipating her captain's return. She was buried on the property and was eventually joined with her sister and other family members. And according to the local lore, the captain's horse was also buried there. Okay. And so here's what it looked like in 1993 when it was the US 1 flea market in the parking lot. And then later on, they did some mass earthworks removal. So it looks like the grave is raising, but the ground level was actually just down because they were grading the ground there in 1994, preparing for the construction of the Lowe's movie theater. And there you can see the Lowe's movie theater in the background with her grave. And if we go to the, oh, I didn't put it here, but I do have some better pictures of it, which I have in an open window. I just need to find the open window. Mary Ellis. There we go. I got it. So this is what it looks like now. The gravesite of Mary Ellis. It's nice. It used to be right in the middle of the parking lot where you could park your cars next to it, but it looked like a service building. And a lot of times people put graffiti on it, all kinds of stuff, but now they separated it, put it on a little grass. There's the grave of Mary Ellis, wife of General A.W. White, Elizabeth Margaret Evans. I guess her other relative is buried there too. Remember, there was another headstone there, but I guess they moved it.
So what was so special about this grave? I mean, there must be more graves around her grave. I'm not sure. I'm just asking because I've seen so many.
Well, there were two graves there. If you remember the historic photo from that website. So they must have removed the bodies from there and relocated them to a cemetery somewhere else. But her grave remains there. Apparently, there's a couple people buried here, as you could see on that headstone. And here's at some point in time where they let it get overgrown. That happens from time to time, and they eventually come around and they get a landscaper to come and clean it up a bit. But look how it got neglected for a while there. But it looks nice today. Now, over the years, the whole area, the whole region changed a lot. I mean, let's go back to the website here. Let's look at the historic photo. Look at all the woods in the background, how it was on a steep hill. This is what it was. This is what the area looked like back in the, what was that?
1800s.
Yeah, 1800s where she died. 1820 something, I think it was. Look at that. Shows you how the landscape of our area has changed a lot for construction and progress. Okay. Have you guys ever heard about Jaws? The movie Jaws?
Yeah.
About the killer shark? Did you know that that's based on a true story that actually happened in New Jersey?
I didn't know that.
Look at that. It is. It's actually based on a true story. And there's a lot of documentaries here and videos that you could see from our slideshow or that Word document in the class links Word document in the shared Google Drive. So Weird NJ also has a story about it. He was called the Matawan Maneater. The Mattawan Maneater, the real life Jersey Jaws. Here's some newspaper clippings from back then. This actually was based on something that happened in 1916 in Beach Haven. There was this young, dashing doctor, eligible bachelor. He went to the Beach Haven. He was off on the Jersey Shore swimming. Back in these days, people were not scared of sharks. They thought sharks were more scared of us. But he found out the bad way when he went out swimming and the shark bit him at the torso and ripped a huge part of his body off. They dragged him into the Seaside Resort Hotel where he ended up dying. But that would have been one thing, a freak thing that the shark killed him. So 5 days later, the shark would strike again 45 miles to the north in Spring Lake. The victim there was Charles Bruder, a Swiss captain at the Sussex Hotel. Oh, wait, that's this guy. Was swimming 130 yards off the shore where he started screaming, "A shark bit me." He bit off his legs and actually part of his torso. And then later, further up north in Mattawan. Mattawan's actually 2 to 3 miles inland from the shore. So how did a shark go there? Well, we have all these tributaries that go in, and it gets to the point where salt water meets the fresh water. And kids were swimming. They had the rope, you swing on the tree and jump in the water and you go swimming and have a good time. There was a lake where these tributaries go and the kids were swimming in it. Now, most of the kids got out of the water and one kid swung, jumped in and yelped and got dragged under. Adult seen this, so he jumped in after and he never resurfaced either. Both of them killed by this shark. And where the salt water meets the fresh water, they call that brackish water. And so here's that hotel where the guy got bit by the shark first. And here is where they were swimming. The kids were swimming. And Lester Stillwell was the 11-year-old boy that jumped in the Mattawan Creek. Then afterwards, you had the adult that jumped in, a 24-year-old Stanley Fisher. Jumped in after to try to save him. After this, it grew such public outrage. People were out there hunting with shotguns and dynamite, trying to kill the shark. You see this explosion here of the dynamite exploding in the water? Look at this. The mothers in the area wanting to kill that shark that killed that young boy. These are actual photos from 1916. And then here's a shark that they ended up capturing off the somewhere off the Jersey Shore. And the grave sites of Lester Stillwell and Mr. Fisher. Here, somebody did a little graffiti, 1916, and drew that shark. Look at the way that reflects. And the train tracks go over. And they put a plaque there where Lester Stillwell and the 24-year-old guy that jumped in to try to save him died. That's some more weird New Jersey history. It's based on a Jersey. Most people would think, hey, if it is a real story, it's got to be based off of something like up north, like in Maine or something, right? Nope, right here in New Jersey. So you got all these documentaries here. If you guys want to watch them in your own time, you're free to do so. I could share those links in the chat window if you want to see them and visit them yourself. The real story of Jaws. There you go. All right. Enough of that. Oh, where is the slide? There we go. All right. So now we're going to talk about back to the real estate stuff. We had our intermission. We'll talk about the real estate stuff. But time's up. So we'll talk about the real estate hazardous substances that we find in real estate: asbestos, lead, radon, urea formaldehyde, mold, carbon monoxide, electromagnetic fields, groundwater contamination, underground storage tanks, and all sorts of other juicy stuff is coming up in this chapter tomorrow. See part 2. Tune in to see part 2 tomorrow. Okay.
And I'm not available